So as I mentioned, U.S. GDP dropped more than expected, and from about 2.5% was the expectation down to 1.6%. And we have another quick chart on that. We can show this. We've seen this chart already, a bit of a different chart this time, but it shows GDP falling, and it also shows you to the right what the expectation for GDP is for the rest of this year. Then we have a chart which I wanted to show you on inflation, consumer inflation in the US. And you can see here that inflation has kind of been flat, slightly higher in the last little while. Inflation rate, core CPI, core inflation 3.8%, and overall headline inflation 3.5%, up from about 3% a few months ago, back, I believe, in January. And the reason why I wanted to bring up inflation and GDP or growth falling, whenever we have slowing growth and higher inflation, you can't help but to hear people starting to talk about this one word called stagflation. And we talk about stagflation every now and again, and it's the term that is used or coined for describing slow growth with high inflation. The last time we saw the example of this really wasn't until, well, you got to go back to, I think, the 1970s, when we had a spike in oil prices, which caused inflation really to go higher, and growth was feeling the effects of higher oil prices, among other things. So people are starting to talk about, will we have stagflation in the economy in the US? And I'm not about to say that stagflation is here as yet. 1 month does not make a trend, but it is definitely something to keep an eye on. And if we continue to see inflation, I guess, move higher, and we continue to see GDP fall, that's going to present a big problem for the Federal Reserve, because you just can't cut your interest rates and get out of this situation, because the more you cut rates, the more inflation can move higher. Yes, you could see growth, but you will also see a growth in the inflation rate. If you raise rates to bring down the inflation rate, well, that will hurt growth. So it's very hard for the Fed to maneuver when you have a situation that we could see, hopefully not, but you could see the United States in, which would be a stagflation situation, low growth and high inflation. So let's keep an eye on the growth numbers out of the US. Some people are saying it's a one-off and that we should see GDP back above 2% at the next reading, the next monthly reading. I hope so. And the hope is that we should see, as the year goes on, many people are predicting inflation to fall. So what we want to see, better growth, lower inflation versus the opposite. So keep an eye on GDP. It fell recently, but something that I think the Fed will keep an eye on going forward.